Welcome to Behind the Law with Justin Clark, the show that takes you behind the law and answers your toughest legal questions.
Welcome to another edition of Behind the Law featuring attorney Justin Clark. And today's show is being broadcast right here on News Talk 96.5 WDBL and taped for later broadcast on WRDQ TV 27 right here in Central Florida. If you want to talk to Justin Clark, get on your phone right now at 407-297-9696 or 855-297-9696. Justin Clark, what is on your agenda today?
Rob Newton, how are you? Thank you
I'm
for letting
doing
me
great, buddy.
Thanks for letting me borrow that Benadryl, man. If I sound a little funny today.
Everybody's got a cold in town right now.
God. How are you? Thanks
I'm not
for
sure
being
who
here
we're going to
as
sue
always.
about this. We're going to sue
I'm
somebody.
not suing anyone.
Okay, go ahead.
Well, a lot to talk about today, really. We're going to talk about Pam Bondi, which came out last week talking about the National Mortgage Settlement, which we've talked about many times on the show. Turns out that only 50% of Floridians eligible for the National Mortgage Settlement have taken advantage of it. So we've got to get the word out, and I'll explain it in great detail about what people need to do. But the almost $7.5 billion allocated for the state of Florida and their homeowners has gone unused.
That is free money,
50%.
people.
Now, let me tell you what happens to the money if we don't use it. It goes to the other states.
That ain't good.
So we've got to use it. And people have just gotten so frustrated dealing with their banks for so long, they don't know that this is even out there on the table. So I'll give you some specifics later about what we need to do. And then later in the show, I also want to talk about HARP, the Attorney General Settlement, FHA refi. I want to explain what the differences are in all of these projects and programs because people get confused. And they all start with H, it seems. So we need to really go through each one of them so I can let people know exactly what they need to do and the differences.
Well, there's been so much talk over the past year about settlements. You know, there was a $28.5 billion settlement. There was a settlement with many of the banks out of California. One of the problems is people have never been told after the settlement was announced, Justin, who qualifies, how they apply for it. There was something out of the government a few months ago about if you filled out something of a letter you got, but most people thought that letter was fake, so they threw it away.
And it wasn't, but it's because they've gotten so many fake solicitation letters in the mail over the past couple of years that a lot of people, my clients, aren't even opening letters anymore. They just go, they either take them right to my office and I put them in the trash can, or they put them in their own trash can. But we need to, now is an important time to be opening mail, especially when it comes to your house, because there are a lot of new programs out there.
All right, if you want to talk to Justin, maybe you were foreclosed upon. If you were foreclosed upon, maybe you qualify for one of these programs. 407-297-9696, 855-297-9696. We're on News Talk 96.5, WDBO, WRDQ, TV 27. All right, who might qualify for this $7.6 billion?
Quite simply, it's the 5 largest servicers. If the 5 largest servicers were dealing with your mortgage, when you got your bill, did it say Ally or GMAC? That's 1. Bank of America is 2. Citi 3. Chase 4. Wells Fargo. If you were getting letters from any of those banks, the 5 largest lenders out there, which the vast majority of people were dealing with them, you could be eligible for the settlement. And for the first time since I've been doing this kind of work, the banks are really doing principal reductions now. They are literally saying, okay, you don't owe us $200,000 anymore. Now you owe us $100 or $120 or whatever it's going to be. And that's fantastic. And I've told people for 4 years now that banks don't do principal reductions. Now they are. So we have to apply. And I know you've probably been frustrated in the past dealing with the bank and the bank losing your paperwork and you calling them and they tell you one thing one day, something else the next day. I know you're frustrated. Now's the time to take advantage of it, though, because they're actually working on things now. They're actually helping people a lot more than in the past. Now, Rob, it's not easy. It's not like, oh, all of a sudden it's easy. It's a lot of hard work, but we can certainly help you through this process. And if you have any desire to keep your house and you're behind in your mortgage or even current, now is the time. I promise you, now is the time.
So this 7.6 is on people who may currently be going through a foreclosure,
Correct.
Not those that are already beyond and into another house.
Absolutely. It's really 2 separate things.
Okay.
And I was talking on WFTV about this, I think, on Friday with one of our favorite reporters, Lori Brown. And it's 2 separate and distinct things. It's one settlement for 2 different kinds of people. One, for the person who was wrongfully foreclosed upon. That means they already kicked you out of your house. You may be entitled to money payments from the bank for them kicking you out of your house. Now, I can't get your house back for you.
Right.
But you may be entitled to a payment The other hand, and maybe more importantly now, though, is people who are still living in their house, who want to keep their house. Maybe they're already in foreclosure. Maybe you have a sale date on your house. If you want to keep it, there is a chance that you can keep it, and a much better chance now than any time in the past.
So the banks have incentive from this $7.6 billion settlement order to give you a settlement, to give you a modification, to make it affordable to live in your house, and you could be getting the answer you've been looking for. This is sort of for all those people that were calling us a year ago saying, hey, the monster mega banks, they all got their help and their bailout from the government. Where's my bailout? This is their bailout?
Finally, it's taken a long time and a lot of billions of dollars changing hands from the government to the banks, from the banks back to the government, but now it's finally at a time where the banks seem to be helping my clients more than they have in the past.
Mm-hmm. Can you give us that list again of servicers?
Of course.
And that would be no matter where you originated your loan.
Correct.
A servicer is the person who may have bought that loan. You might have started your loan at the Gary and Jim's bank down the street. He might have been your mortgage broker. But then you got a letter from one of these big servicers saying, we're Wells Fargo. We've just taken over servicing. You send your payments to us. All right, so there's 5 of them, right?
Ally, GMAC, that's 1. Bank of America, 2. Citi Mortgage, Chase, or Wells Fargo. Those 5 servicers, if you have them and you're trying to work something out with them, now is the time.
Well, that's a majority of just about everybody in this listening audience, I would think.
I don't think people understand that, they go to their little local bank and get their mortgage, and then they're, 2 days later they have a new person, a new bank servicing. It's because the local guy doesn't really hang on to that paper, so to speak. They sell it immediately to typically one of these big banks like that.
And, of course, those big banks were the ones that many of them had problems with the robo-signings, the mishandling of loans, the didn't know where the notes were, the original notes. And in the case of Central Florida, some of those notes were still at the original bank. So that was a problem right there.
Absolutely.
The court said, you can't do that. You can't play the game that way.
Ask your question live. Tune into FM 96.5 WDBO Sundays at noon and ask Justin your question.
Because I've been told if you file bankruptcy, they have to do an appraisal on the property and pretty much either write you a loan for what the house is now worth now.
Stay tuned. Justin Clark will be right back with more Behind the Law. Welcome back to Behind the Law, the show that takes you behind the law and answers your toughest legal questions.
407-297-9696 or 855-297-9696. Those are the numbers to call if you've got a question. George in Orange County, you've got a question for Justin Clark. Why don't we go ahead and put you on the air?
Hi.
George, welcome to the show. How are you?
Thank you. I was working with the, I've been foreclosed on, but I still have my home. I was working with the Independent Foreclosure Review Board that kept extending their deadlines to have everything to them until the end of the year.
Right.
And I got sick and I totally forgot about getting it done, and it expired at the end of the year. Is that something that is still functional? Is it something that I really missed out on, or what?
Who is your lender, George?
Bank of America.
Bank of America. Really, you had until January 18th to apply under the National Mortgage Settlement, but it was only paying people a little over $800, just so you know. There's still going to be, I think, a lot of other lawsuits going on. I don't think you probably missed your time, and I really do think that the National Mortgage Settlement is going to extend their January 18th deadline as well. If I were you, I would start with going to the nationalmortgagesettlement.com and also go to Pam Bondi's website, and she's going to have some more information. While it hasn't been extended yet, I envision another extension.
Okay.
Thanks for the call, George.
There were so many people, George, that never even responded to that in the first place. When that thing was first issued last year, if I'm not mistaken, only 16% of the people responded to it because they just didn't know about it. So hopefully they're going to continue to do that. That money's got to be going somewhere. Okay? 407-297-9696 or 855-297-9696. A few minutes ago before the break, James in Eastern Orlando, this is something that Justin really specializes in. What happens if somebody goes bankrupt? What happens? What type of bankruptcy do you go into? Or is it even a good idea to go bankrupt when times get like this? Let's go ahead, James, with your question.
Well, I'd just like to know, is that the way to do it, to make these banks really work with you? Because I've been told if you file bankruptcy, they have to do an appraisal on a property and pretty much either write you a loan for what the house is now worth now, or you got to give them the keys and walk away, and they can't come after you for the debt.
Unfortunately, it's just bad information you've been given. There are two different types of bankruptcy. One is a Chapter 7. And in a Chapter 7, you basically liquidate all your debt. Everything goes away. You owe no one nothing. But the bank has no obligation whatsoever to reduce your principal or even work with you. In fact, you're probably not even going to get a mediation in a Chapter 7. At Chapter 13, you are entitled to a mortgage mediation program where you're going to go and have a mediation with the lender and try to get the interest rate lowered or possibly the principal lowered. However, I think there's a misconception out there that the bankruptcy judges are really forcing the banks to reduce principal on first mortgages, because they're just not. What other kind of debt do you have, James?
I have some credit card debt, some leftover, from a business and things like that, but it's not that substantial. What the real problem with me is I have two properties.
Right.
Both are upside down. I'm trying to short sell one and keep the other. The other bank is not Wells Fargo. They have not wanted to work with me at all because it's a second property. So I stopped paying on that one about a year ago.
Right.
And trying to work out a short sale, and they denied me for every kind of
why?
forbearance plan, modification, you name it.
Have you gotten the short sale close to completion yet? Have they denied it?
Well,
What's going on?
There's a contract.
Right.
We're waiting for them to hopefully approve it and get it through.
How much do you have in credit card debt?
Maybe $30,000.
$30,000. And what kind of income do you have coming in?
Probably like 50.
You're right there on the line. We probably need to explore this a little bit more. You can always reach me at 321-282-1055 because I'm a big advocate of avoiding bankruptcy too, if you can. And maybe finishing the short sale, modifying your existing loan, and then the only thing you have left over is that credit card debt. But it is getting a little bit high where a bankruptcy might be the best option. Just throw it all in there. So I don't know. Call me or go to my website, gregory-clark.com.
Ask your question live. Tune into FM 96.5 WDBO Sundays at noon and ask Justin your question.
I just wanted to see if there were any options for principal reduction or any kind of programs out there for people like me who are underwater.
Stay tuned. Justin Clark will be right back with more Behind the Law.
Justin, next week, got anything to do after the show next week?
Next Saturday, February 9th, Festival Park, the Orlando Chili Cook-Off. I will be there sponsoring the event, presented by RP Funding. I hope everyone comes out and sees me.
It's chili for a great cause, and all of the world's greatest eaters, the folks that won the Nathan's contest and others, are all gathering in O-Town to see if they are the biggest of the best eaters.
Every dollar benefiting the Special Olympics of Florida. It's a great cause, but a great time as well.
Do I have to wear a bib?
You should,
okay.
Knowing how you eat.
I'll be there.
Welcome back to Behind the Law, the show that takes you behind the law and answers your toughest legal questions.
And welcome back to Behind the Law, featuring attorney Justin Clark of Gregory & Clark, attorneys at law right in Longwood, Florida. We're taking your calls right now at 407-297-9696 or 855-297-9696. If you'd like to call Justin, now would be the time. Justin, we got plenty of calls coming in right now, and we're talking about foreclosures. We're talking about some help that you're out there in the settlement. And our callers right now, let's go to Glenn in Oviedo. Glenn, what is your question for Justin Clark?
Hey, I heard you guys mention at the beginning of the show that right now is the time to act, possibly even for people who are current on their mortgage. I have a Bank of America mortgage that we're current on, and we've had it for about 5 years. And I think our house is probably worth about half of what we owe on it. So I just wanted to see if there were any options for principal reduction or any kind of programs out there for people like me who are underwater, to a significant amount of money,
right.
But we're current.
Yeah, there certainly are. Modification should be done on people who are current. Back in the day when we first started doing this, every single time if one of my clients would call the bank and say, hey, bank, I need help, the bank would say every time, without question, miss 3 payments and then call us back.
Not good.
But the modification programs that have come out in since the early days of this, 5 years ago, say that you can do modifications when you're current. I'll be totally honest with you. I believe the banks don't work as well with people who are paying them. Mm-hmm. I think if they're getting paid, they're not nearly as likely to work with you. Unfortunately, it's just part of the game, I guess. So it doesn't make sense. So basically, you're telling me if I stop paying you, you're going to work with me. But if I continue to try to do the right thing and protect my credit and pay you, you're not going to work with me. However, technically, they really should work on a modification with you. It really comes down to your income. Do you have any idea if you're Fannie or Freddie? Any idea, Glenn?
I don't think I'm either one.
Because if it's Fannie or Freddie, they will not reduce the principal. Your principal cannot get reduced. And it's probably a good idea for you out there listening to go do a search for Fannie Mae loan lookup and Freddie Mac loan lookup. And look up and see if your loan is owned by Fannie or Freddie, because it does change some things. If it's owned by Fannie or Freddie, or backed by Fannie and Freddie, they will not reduce the principal. If it's not, I think we have an excellent shot based on what's going on right now.
Well, how do I get the process started? Is that something your law firm helps people with?
It is, yeah. I mean, ideally, I'd probably want you to come in and let's sit down and talk before we even start working on it. I'm at 321-282-1055 because I want to look at your income and some other things to make sure it is an appropriate step for you. I mean, if you're making a ton of money, it's probably unlikely. But if you're just kind of getting by, then certainly I think they should help you.
Yeah, I don't think we would meet any income requirements. We're not doing too bad.
What kind of monthly gross income? Any idea?
About $12,000.
So you're probably not a great candidate for it, really. But it certainly could be worth a shot. Or you even call your bank yourself and let them know you want to apply for a modification and see what they'll do. But at $12,000 gross, it's not very likely.
All right.
I'm glad you're doing well, but you're just not the ideal person that they're trying to help, as you can imagine.
Most of the callers Justin's talking about, it should be 30% of your monthly income.
I say
that'd be a rather expensive home, wouldn't it?
Be a big house. I like to, as a good rule of thumb for you, Rob, to add up your gross monthly income before taxes, multiply it by 0.31, and that's what your payment should be. PITI, principal, interest, taxes, and insurance. And if you're paying more than that, we probably should talk.
Yeah, unless that was the home at Versailles. I don't think that's the one we're talking about here.
Tune into FM 96.5 WDBO Sundays at noon and ask Justin your question.
Oftentimes someone has just let their house go into foreclosure or whatever, and they'll get a 1099-A. And that just means abandonment. That does not mean they're canceling the debt. So there's two distinct kinds of 1099.
Stay tuned. Justin Clark will be right back with more Behind the Law. Welcome back to Behind the Law, the show that takes you behind the law and answers your toughest legal questions.
All right, let's go to John in East Orlando. John, interesting question about selling a piece of property. Go ahead.
Yes. I had a question. I probably talked to you a few months ago. Yes, I was underwater with a townhome, and it was sold about 13 months ago. Took about 7 or 8 months, and I just have the W-2, I guess, or W-4 question from, we had 2 mortgages on it. Primary was Wells Fargo, and we had a equity line of credit. I was wondering for the tax year, it was probably processed last January since it was so close to the end of the year.
Mm-hmm.
And I just wanted to know if I have the account numbers and everything, if I should pursue those.
Did they waive the deficiency?
Yep.
So what you did was a short sale and you had 2 mortgages, correct?
That is correct.
And did both of the companies waive the deficiency? Did you have a letter at closing from the banks, 1 and 2, saying we accept $100,000 from whoever buyer and we waive the deficiency against John?
I went through a divorce, but that's personal. But on the other hand, I just wanted to cover myself for the, like I said, it was a year and it was late in the end. So my ex asked me to file federal taxes this year if it carried into January.
Okay, did the banks waive the deficiency against you? Do you know? That's something that you would know.
I do not. They cancel out everything.
If I were you, I would call the title company and that did the closing and ask them for a copy of your file, because I want to see the letters, the approval letters from the banks, and I want them to say we waive the deficiency, because if they did, you should get a 1099. Rob, what happens is when you do a short sale and they forgive debt, you're going to get a 1099, a 1099-C, which means cancellation of debt. Oftentimes someone has just let their house go into foreclosure or whatever, and they'll get a 1099-A. And that just means abandonment. That does not mean they're canceling the debt. So there's two distinct kinds of 1099. Now, the last thing I want to see happen to you, John, is you get audited in a couple years by the IRS, and they come back and say, well, you got this 1099 from the lender, and you didn't do anything on it. So now not only do you owe us taxes from back then, you have penalties and interest, and you don't want that to happen. I think you probably want to use a CPA who can actually look and see if there's a 1099 out there against you, because I can't think of any reason why there wouldn't be one out there, and I don't want you for it to trigger an audit because you didn't say anything about it. One of the main reasons I want you to do it is because I don't think you're going to be liable for any taxes on it. Because of the Mortgage Debt Relief Act of 2007 says you do not pay taxes on forgiven debt on your primary home.
Now, did that sale take place? And I'm not the attorney here. I'm just asking a question. Did that sale take place this last year, John?
Right.
All right. Well, then you're not going to get all of your financial papers are not due till January 31st.
Well, it should be. I got my W-2. I just want to clear myself.
Yeah.
And,
I'm just saying that some of the banks may not get that paperwork to you till January 31st. If even then, last year they were late on a lot of it, weren't they?
Absolutely. If this just happened last year, you might not even have it yet, but definitely be looking out in the mail for it. And I think because the Mortgage Debt Relief Act was extended through the end of this year, you're going to be fine. You don't have to worry about taxes on it. But you don't want to just avoid the 1099. You have to deal with it and make sure it gets filed properly, but you're not going to have to pay any taxes on that.
That's going to be great. And again, we get together each and every week right here on the program. Justin Clark of Attorneys Gregory and Clark right here on News Talk 96.5 and TV 27 WRDQ.
Thank you for watching Behind the Law with Justin Clark. Be sure to join us again next week as Justin takes you behind the law and answers your legal questions.